A caregiver's biggest fear is something happening to the person they're looking after. But what if the real danger is that innocent, elderly person you're supposed to be watching? This is the story of our friend Clara, and how what she thought was a one-night job turned into a nightmare. I can tell you my name is Clara, but I've changed the names of the other people in the story I'm about to tell to protect their identities. This happened to me when I was a senior nursing student in college, during a one-night caregiving job I took for some extra income. That night, I learned that sometimes, even the most innocent-looking situations can suddenly turn into the most terrifying nightmares. I had arranged the job with Emily through an ad I found online. Her mother, Helen, had advanced dementia, and since Emily had to work the night shift, she needed someone with experience to watch over her mother. I arrived at their apartment in the evening. Before leaving, Emily explained Helen's condition to me. Sometimes she might wake up at night and wander around the house in a confused state, she said. Don't be scared. You just need to calm her down and guide her back to bed. Since I had dealt with similar situations before, I was confident in myself. After Emily left the house, I gave Helen her medication and helped her get into bed. She seemed quite calm. The first few hours of the night passed in silence. I sat on the couch in the living room, reviewing my class notes. The silence of the apartment was only broken by the occasional muffled sound from the refrigerator. I felt relieved, thinking everything was under control. I was so engrossed in my class notes that I didn't realize how much time had passed. It was after midnight. Just as I was about to stretch and take a little break, I was startled by a rhythmic sound coming from the kitchen. It sounded as if a cabinet door was being opened and closed over and over again. It occurred to me that Helen might have woken up. I slowly got up from the couch and quietly walked towards the kitchen. The sight I saw when I peeked through the doorway sent a chill down my spine. Helen was standing in front of one of the kitchen cabinets with her back to me. With her hand on the handle, she was senselessly opening the cabinet door, closing it, opening it, closing it. She wasn't looking for anything, nor was she reacting in any way while doing it. "Helen?" I called out. She stopped when she heard my voice. Slowly, she turned towards me. There was no expression on her face, no recognition, no surprise, just a blank, vacant stare. After looking at me like that for a few seconds, she walked past me without a word and disappeared down the hallway. I heard her go back into her room. I followed and looked from her doorway. She was, indeed, lying in her bed. After seeing Helen back in her bed, I returned to the living room. What had happened was strange, but Emily's warning came to my mind. It's probably just a symptom of her dementia, I thought. Even though I tried to reassure myself this way, the unsettling feeling inside me hadn't completely gone away. As the hours passed, fatigue really started to set in. I decided to go to the small guest room at the end of the hallway, which Emily had told me I could use if I needed, to at least get a couple of hours of sleep. I went into the room, and I must have fallen asleep the moment I hit the bed. I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up again to that same rhythmic sound of a cabinet opening and closing. But this time, the sound wasn't coming from the kitchen, but from right beside me, in the room where I was sleeping. I opened my eyes in terror. When I reached for the lamp next to my bed and turned on the light, I saw Helen repeatedly opening and closing the room's closet door. In that moment, I was so scared I didn't know what to do. I slowly got out of bed and approached her. "Helen?" I said. She turned towards me and whispered, "Emily? Is that you, my dear?" I didn't know what to say at that moment, so just to manage the situation, I said, "Yes, it's me, Mom. Let's go back to bed." It seemed to work. I took her by the hand, calmly escorted her to her room, and helped her back into bed. Just then, Helen said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I calmed her down and left the room. After leaving Helen's room, my sleep was completely gone. I went to the living room, wanting to watch some TV to pass the time and wait for morning. As I was engrossed in the television, I heard a sound from inside the house. Frankly, after all the noises I'd heard that night, I was starting to get used to them. But I was still curious, and when I turned around, I experienced the biggest shock of my life. Helen was looking at me, holding a stick in her hand, and she was rhythmically hitting the wall of the house with it. I was truly terrified. I didn't know what to do. "Helen, are you okay?" I called out. She didn't answer. Then she slowly started walking towards me. I called out to her again and again, but she said nothing, just kept coming towards me with that same blank expression. Suddenly she started swinging the stick and attacking me. In the fear of that moment, without thinking about my shoes or my bag, I threw myself out the door. I was going to call the police, but I didn't feel it was necessary for an old, sick woman. I immediately called Emily. I told her about her mother's strange behavior and how she had finally attacked me with a stick. At first, she couldn't believe it. "My mother wouldn't even hurt an ant," she said. But when she understood the fear and panic in my voice, she grew worried and said she would come home right away. Soon after, Emily arrived. We went up to the apartment together, but I didn't go inside. I waited at the door. Her mother wasn't in the living room. Emily told me that when she checked the bedroom, she found her mother sleeping in her bed and found the stick right next to her bed. "She's never done anything like this before," she said. She apologized profusely, saying she hadn't realized her mother's condition had gotten so much worse. I didn't even ask for the money from that job. I never called Emily again, nor did I ever pass by anywhere near that apartment building. That night was truly a big lesson for me. I understood that night both how challenging the nursing profession can be and how even the most seemingly vulnerable people can sometimes be dangerous. What would you do if you moved into a new apartment and found a small note left by the previous tenant? And what if that note said, "Be careful of what's behind the wall, it can hear you"? This is the story of how something he thought was a simple joke turned into a nightmare. I found an affordable apartment in an old building. It was the quiet, simple place that would be good for my solitude, which I'd been looking for years. The first night, I made myself a coffee and drank it standing among the small cardboard boxes. I thought I was finally going to get my life in order, but I was wrong. On the third day after I moved in, I found a small note in the bathroom. It was stuck just under the sink. On it, only this sentence was written: "Be careful of what's behind the wall, it can hear you." At first, I laughed. Maybe the previous tenant was bored, or it was just a silly joke. But after that night, some things started to change. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound. It was a very strange sound, just like someone was breathing slowly from inside the wall. It was as if someone was there, listening to me. The wall the sound was coming from was between my bedroom and the neighboring apartment, but I had no neighbor. At least no one had moved in there yet. I approached the wall, and at that moment, I heard the sound again, a hiss, and then something that sounded like a whisper. "Can't sleep?" My blood ran cold. The only thing I could think of at that moment was that someone was hiding in the apartment. But I didn't want to call the police. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where the sound was coming from. And the most terrifying part? The sound was coming from inside, but there was no echo. It was just as if it was passing right through the wall. I left the lights on until morning, and I sat there, staring at the wall. But that night, there were no more sounds. The next morning, I pulled myself together and went to see the elderly neighbor downstairs. The poor woman had been living here for 20 years. I embarrassedly asked her, "Who lived upstairs before me?" She was silent for a moment, then pursed her lips and said, "He was a young person too, but he didn't stay long. One morning, we woke up to the sound of screaming, but when the police arrived, the apartment was empty, except for," she said. "Except for what?" I asked. The woman averted her eyes. There were writings on the walls, something like his own language. No one could understand it, but he also used to say, just like you, that he heard a voice from inside the wall. At that moment, something inside me broke. I realized I wasn't alone, but that didn't comfort me. On the contrary, I became even more afraid, because the past of this apartment was darker than I had thought. After talking with my neighbor, I started to feel uneasy in the apartment. Since that night, the rustling sounds from behind the walls had started to come more frequently. It was as if someone was moving around inside. In the middle of the night, I couldn't take it anymore. I felt the wall, the plaster was loose. I took a hammer and started to tap gently, and behind it, a small cavity appeared. When I reached my hand in there, I touched a box, an old metal box. There was no lock on it, nor any name, but when I opened its lid, a cold shiver ran through my entire body. Inside, there were a few yellowed letters, a couple of Polaroid photos, and a notebook scrawled with a child's handwriting. The letters were chaotic, but the same words kept appearing. It lives in the wall. It comes out when it's night. Don't ever open the door. The photos, on the other hand, showed different parts of the house, but they were all taken at night, and in all of them, a shadowy figure stood in the same place, right in front of the door. I started to read the notebook. The first page began with a sentence scribbled in a childlike manner. It is watching me. On the other pages, it talked about the sounds that came every night at the same time. Rustles, whispers, and one night, it wrote that the voice had called its name. But the most shocking part was the note at the end. The person inside the wall whispered my name. It wants to play with me, but I belong to it now. My hair stood on end as I read. The child had moved out of the house shortly after writing this. The next night, just as my eyes were closing in bed, a muffled voice came from inside the wall. It sounded like a child's voice, slowly whispering, "You will belong to me too." I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound, every shadow was now a threat. I approached the wall and pressed my ear against it. From inside, I could hear scratching sounds like the sound of fingernails. It was as if someone wanted to get out from the inside. I felt the wall with my hands. A brick was loose. I pushed it. Behind it, there was a dark void, a small space inside the wall. And then, I couldn't look away. Because in the darkness, two eyes were looking at me. Dull, pitch black, and deep. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I ran away without even packing my things. Now I'm in another city, but every night, in the quietest moment of my sleep, I hear that sound. The sound of something scratching the wall.